with Jesse Harris from the University of Texas at San Antonio, and he will be introduced. His paper is Join-Unjoin, a hearing son's journey to find the deaf mother he never knew. He will be introduced by the Dean of the Honors College at UT San Antonio, Dr. Richard Dean.
Thank you. Those of you who came yesterday and you went to the plenary session that talked about barriers. As I was listening, and I know Jesse and what he's going to talk about today, just kind of think about that and then listen to what this is his creative work. I think he'll kind of fits in. But let me tell you a little bit about him. He graduated last December from UTSA with a Bachelor of Arts in Anthropology, summa cum laude, and with the highest honors. He completed his thesis, an autoethnographic memoir under the supervision of Professor John Philip Santos at UT San Antonio. He now makes his home in California, where he's a graduate student in learning, design, and technology at the Stanford University School of Education. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jesse Harris.
Hi, thank you. In the summer of 2008, I began a path toward reconciliation with my deaf mother, who had been diagnosed with end-stage liver disease and a litany of life-threatening medical complications. At age 59, a lifetime of drinking and drug abuse not only ravaged Mom's body, but in the preceding 30 years, it also robbed her of an opportunity to raise her only child. My mother's disability contributed to a strained relationship with her hearing parents and brothers, her lack of a true language until age 5, her lifelong struggle with substance abuse. Yet the root cause of her inability to care for herself or for me wasn't her deafness, but rather an inherent isolation brought about by her alienation in the hearing world. This manuscript seeks to illuminate this world by juxtaposing linguistic, cultural, familial, and other dimensions of the deaf world to those with those more familiar to its mostly hearing audience. This is accomplished by interrogating the gray areas of seemingly binary relationships, hearing and deaf, spoken and signed, mother and stranger, join and unjoin. By doing so, I implore the reader to question the nature of the grayness and the rigid black and white absolutes on either side. This manuscript is a reflection on my emotional journey and struggle to find a common thread that links me to the mother that I would only begin to know in the last 3 years of her life. Upon her liver disease diagnosis, shortly before my 27th birthday, and after a lifetime of alienation and resentment, I begrudgingly agreed to assist with her aftercare, believing that I was the only remaining link to the hearing world of doctors and hospitals and government assistance that might prolong her life. And what I unexpectedly uncovered along the way was that there are distilled central traits that unite me with Mom. And it allowed for a kind of reconciliation before her death. So by juxtaposing our prolonged estrangement throughout childhood and our intense closeness at the time of her death, I hope to challenge the nature of the reader's own essential relationships. My mother was a supporting actress in the story of my childhood, it seemed, only appearing to stir up old battles or explode with emotions. And this underscores the irony of our relationship later in life when I would be the parent, ensuring that she made it to doctor's appointments and ate the right things and paid bills on time and remained emotionally well-balanced. So throughout the manuscript, the reader must question his or her own conceptions about the archetypes for mother and son, hearing and deaf, nature and nurture, hopeless despair and unrestrained joy. It was Doris's addiction that pushed her away from her only child and that caused her untimely death. And paradoxically, her terminal illness allowed our relationship to heal and for an unconventional mother-son connection to grow. It was her inability to stay sober for the majority of her life that forced me to look at my own demons and seek my own sobriety, sparing myself the same fate that she went through and finding redemption and meaning in her death. It was in her dying that I began to live. This journey, as a preface, goes through 2 timelines in alternating chapters. The first storyline, Unjoin, features key moments in our shared and individual lives that question conventional ideas of mother and son. So drunken confessions of family secrets shared too soon, hurtful remarks passed along from mother to daughter to son, and second chances for parents to get things right. These stories have been taken from the first 26 years of our relationship and reveal a slow unraveling of the fabric of our family. Alternating chapters in the second storyline, Join, provide the rising action for the book, and so they tell the story of the last 3 years of our relationship as Mom battled terminal liver disease and the consequences of her choices. The book begins as Doris slips into dementia brought about by increased sodium and ammonia levels in her blood, just shy of her the final evaluation that would put her on the organ transplant recipient list. This book offers cultural, linguistic, and historical insight into the deaf world that framed our relationship and our lives. It speaks to larger societal and cultural questions about the impacts of addiction and deafness and poverty and illness and how these relate to the fundamental parent-child relationship. So the book's title, Join-Unjoin, is a gloss of the compound ASL's hand sign, Join-Unjoin, which literally means the breaking of a relationship. And the title speaks to the central questions of my manuscript. What causes the rip in the parent-child relationship? One of the most essential in life. Can true reconciliation ever be achieved? And most importantly for me as a writer is to dispatch a challenge to the reader to find his or her own answer to these questions. What is total reconciliation, and is it ever possible once that fabric has been ripped? And so today I've brought a couple of excerpts from my book. As I mentioned, it operates in alternating chapters, and so the preface is a little different in that it's written in third person as my mom lay dying. And so I'd like to share some of that with you. I will share that there is some strong language in my writing. I've also included text for the preface to show a little bit of the neologisms and some of the choices I made as a writer that I believe set this work apart. He is angry and he is exhausted and he is finished drinking ice water, thank you very much, and he is feeling the dry cry pain for when tears stop coming, and he is wondering what is taking Mom so long to die, and he is feeling ashamed. He is alone, and he sits, and he stands, and he paces in the bed in reverse L formation, and he counts his steps back and forth to see if their number changes, and he is tired of the chair, and he is tired of the room, and he is tired of the tinny smell of iodine and cleaning solution, and he cannot get comfortable. He is meekly waving away nurses who ask what they can bring, what they can get, what they can do, until more family comes to be with her. And he is unbothered and a little proud that they are again alone, as it seemed they always had been. He is sitting and standing and pacing and counting, and he is wearing dazed, dirty jeans and a tear-soaked shirt that reeks of unshowered embarrassment. He watches her face, and he watches the screens, and he watches the iron lung that keeps her breathing. And he is stalking a fly that has roused with the rising sun, that now buzz smacks against a glaring pane of window glass, and he is imagining how it climbed 12 stories and into the protected ICU, and he is watching it weaken with each collision, 32, 33, 34, and he is watching it slow, and he is watching it stop. And he is certain it, too, will die before the day is out. He is voicelessly counting his steps on tight-clenched hands, and he is an endless loop of left cheek twitching and reverse L pacing, and he is politely disinterested in what the doctors, clergy, nurses have to say now, and he is hearing them at the end of the hall as they talk about sodium levels, as they talk about organ shutdown, as they talk about living wills, as they talk about asphyxiation. He is waiting. His thoughts are only interrupted by the tap, tap, tap of family, friends, strangers on the sliding glass door, and he is tired of answering, "Are you okay?" And he is tired of parroting, "Are you okay?" And he wants only to be held by the two arms in the room that will never hold him again. He is calculating the number of seating combinations for the 4 visitors and 3 chairs they share, and he is making small talk with an uncle and aunt he hasn't related to since childhood, and he is wishing things hadn't unraveled when Grandma died, and he is thinking of so many Christmases ago when they were a family without Mom, and he is wishing she could have been part of that family. He watches as the sun throws orange sparks across the sterile cotton blanket that is her shroud. He takes a deep breath just before his mind dives back under the water of worry that flooded his brain with a 1 a.m. phone call. It's time. He is thinking about her childhood, and he is thinking about his childhood, and he is staring at her quivering mouth corners, and he is watching the monitors that beep, beep, beep every time her pulse drops a little bit further. And he is bargaining with any god who will listen, and he is trusting the universe's infinite wisdom and reserving a thimbleful of doubt. He is telling her she can go now, and he is telling her it's okay, and he is almost believing it for himself. You can go now. It's okay. He is saying the words to himself for himself. It is soon. He is feeling her puffy hand getting colder, and he is seeing the skin stretch tight, and he is seeing liver spots expanding and blurring out of focus, and he is looking at his own hands for reassurance. His head is spinning 12 stories in the sky, and he will miss telling her about the new babies he saw on floor 5, and the sweet old woman whose sweet old husband is finally going back home, and the interminable Texas summer that has passed her by these last 5 weeks. The fly's buzz has slowed, and its half-hearted smack against the window belies its every biological instinct to survive. Survive. He silently says the word over and over and over, so many times seen it written in his head that the word has started to lose its form, and he second-guesses its spelling and then its meaning. Their moment is broken by the scent of her sister-in-law's smoky sandalwood perfume, and he is instinctively defensive that they cannot be alone, and he is secretly relieved that they cannot be alone. And they will never be alone together ever again in this world. He is praying with ministers he has never met, and family he has unrecently known, and he feels her soul warming the room, and the rejoined family circling in prayer above her. A nurse and the now silent fly confirm what he has known is coming for years. He is thinking about life without her, and he is thinking about life without her, and he is thinking about how he will never feel her 4'11" head resting under his 5'9" chin as they stand in her smoky apartment hallway. And he is thinking about her tortured body, and he is thinking about her suffering, and he is thinking about redemption, and he is thinking about the grandkids she will never know, and he is thinking about life without her. He is thinking about life without her, and he is thinking about the 3 decades they didn't speak, and he is feeling guilty for what could have been, and he is rubbing her fluid-swollen hand, and he is swearing that he will never drink like her again. And he is feeling the eye sting again, and he is feeling the left twitch, and he is feeling his soul bending, twisting, break, and he is done being the fucking strong one. And she is letting go, and he is letting go, and she is gone. So that's the preface. Chapter 1 jumps into the story of my childhood and the deaf world. Chapter 1. Their deafness was loud. Our screaming television harmonized nightly with the shrieking kettle that Mom used to brew and forget her tea. Sports watch timers kept tempo like unattended IV machines. I'm backlit, so it's okay. Mom was the conductor of this not-so-silent symphony. Dad, its concertmaster. Their orchestra of deaf friends arrived in 1s and 2s before gently settling 8, 10, now 12 into a space intended for 4. When friends talked over each other, they smacked forearm with wrist in an unpretty pileup of limbs. I was the only hearing member of the evening's ensemble, and I usually took the seat assigned the 3rd chair tubist, crossed-legged and under the table. Our barebones apartment overflowed with loud hand-slapping and guttural noises and unnatural silences in the middle of stories that are like the eye of a deaf storm. Dad was close to silent when he signed, but Mom and many of her friends from grade school loved the way that sounds tickled their throats. A signed, "That Fred Maxwell is cheating on his wife, and I know it," was accompanied by vocalizations, more ms and oohs than attempts at English words. Their vowel-heavy sounds were unbound by any notions of normal pitch or amplification. Their free voices in alternating heavy sharps and dominant flats, these were the soundtrack of my childhood. Not all of them spoke. In fact, many of my parents' friends, painfully aware of their outsiderness, clenched their vocal cords when I was in earshot. Johnny, clad in a black leather jacket so dark that it trapped light, accented tales of his adventures in the Austin Deaf Harley Club with trills of aspirated consonants unfitting his tall linebacker frame. I remembered laughing at his voice. It reminded me of Chewbacca with a head cold. A gravelly trill starting deep in his stomach that exited over tight-strung vocal cords. Hands flying and pitch soaring, then crashing, Mom held court over an audience that digested each and every word. While her body played out how she heard so-and-so had been caught doing such and such, Her feet stamped a tango beat, and her deaf song arced into the air with a trail of sparkling detail. Mom's voice was beautiful. She could speak with a clarity that made her understandable over phone lines. Her wordless vocalizations gilded already beautiful hand signs and three-dimensional phrases. Her laugh started at the bridge of her nose and only dropped as her tiny lungs paused for air. The bang, bang, bang played an offbeat rhythm to the delight of the crowd. From my vantage point under the kitchen table, the overhead card game was a never-ending drum roll as people banged tight fist onto my corrugated wood roof to emphasize a point or grab the attention of a friend whose hand was on the table but looking away. Their inability to hear and the culture that sprung up from their shared language and experience unifies them, but they do not consider themselves handicapped. They may need occasional accommodations, flashing alarm clocks, vibrating couch speakers, but they are not disabled. In our house, farts accompanied conversation like staccato timpani notes. The not-so-silent vibrations provided no source of embarrassment for our deaf visitors, so long as a strange facial expression or an unpleasant smell didn't draw attention. But a hearing foreigner's laughter drew unwanted attention to an otherwise overlooked part of deaf life, and Mom got on to me early for making her friends uncomfortable. The apartment's built-in hamper served as a safe house for my unavoidable giggle fits. I was slowly learning the rules of the deaf world. We banged on tables to get others' attention. Flashing lights signaled someone's arrival. We celebrated the music of deaf voices. We laughed at the smell of broken wind, but not the sound. I was in their world and of their world and not. So as I mentioned, that's one storyline. The other storyline is in the hospital as Mom's dying. So I just wanted to give you a short sense of kind of what those chapters are like. This is chapter 4, worse. You know, she's real sweet, Marianne offered, noticing I put down my homework to battle with my thoughts. I was here with her yesterday morning when all the hallucinating was going on, and she was just so scared. She wasn't mean like the ones I usually sit with, just scared. It was early, and I had stopped by the hospital before work to do the previous night's homework and to wait to visit with the doctor. Her condition, along with her fetal posture, hadn't changed. She is very sweet, I managed, returning to my literature anthology and a particular Japanese story I had read 3 times, each rereading bouncing off my brain like a tennis ball off Texas cement. I bet she sure is a good mama to you. Marianne must not have been versed in body language, as my upbringing in the deaf world had shaped me to be. Cross-armed and looking out the window, I did not want to talk. Yes, she's very sweet. A beat. Then, we have a special relationship. I've spent a lifetime battling semantics, first within my own bilingual world and now with the uninformed others who sought to confine our relationship within the binaries of mother and son. I was her progeny. Grandma had reassured me of this at age 9 when, after seeing a Sally Jesse Raphael show on adoption, I irrationally insisted that I must have been born to another family. She had birthed me, but the semantic accoutrements that accompanied the title mother were like the oversized hospital gown that now hung on her tiny frame. The aide had assumed, as had the nurses, as had the gastroenterologist, as had the respiratory therapist, as had the anesthesiologist, and as had the hospice manager and the social worker, that we had a relationship like other mothers and sons. What a quaint picture, I must think. A woman who can't hear, and her son who miraculously learned to talk and function like a normal person. A mother courageously battling against her disability to provide for her son, sacrificing so that he might have a better life. A son grateful to now care for the mother who once protected him. How interesting our lives must have been, and how heartbreaking that she now lay in the transplant wing of University Hospital, sleeping for the first time in days. I could see this bullshit story come together behind their eyes, but usually offered no rebuttal. It served no real purpose to explain that this is the woman who left me with her parents on my second day of life so she could go drink and party with friends several hundred miles away. This woman laying in the reclining bed was the same one who had been acting out since she was a child, throwing herself on the ground in wild temper tantrums, well into my childhood, when things didn't go her way. This mama you think you know so well, Marianne, is the very same one who chose drugs over her son and isolation over family, and now again she found herself stuck, alone, and I was left to piece things together. This line of thinking inevitably led down a resentful path, and I had learned that my only freedom would be to stop the tape from replaying in my head. The truth was, in the last 3 years, I had come to terms with Mom's addiction and the healthy boundaries I had to draw to maintain my own sense of serenity. But Marianne pushed. I bet you she used to talk to you a lot, didn't she? Then, without pausing for an answer, I heard her talking before we got her to sleep. I could understand some of what she was saying. Not everything, but I got a few words, and she has a sweet laugh, too. What torture was this, Marianne? Haven't I suffered enough? Yes, she did a lot of speech therapy so she could learn and learn to speak and read lips, I offered, hoping it would bring another topic. Well, she certainly did a good job raising you. You speak so well to those doctors, I can tell you're really smart. I know your mom is real proud of you. She was. She is. Thanks.